So introduction of this type of distribution, corporate income tax in Latvia have almost 20 years history because initial discussions was in the millennium, in the beginning of this century, and politically it was decided in 2017 to have this type of reform in combination with the reform of the personal income tax, in combination with changes in other taxes, to have this opportunity to give an incentives for reinvested profit, to give incentive for equity financing, and to try to push the national economy. The biggest challenge in Latvia was, of course, change management for the reform as such. We had a transition period for the first half of the year. And secondly, of course, in the long run, it is changes in the revenue structure. It is decrease in the revenues in terms of corporate income tax share of the GDP from 1.6 to 0.2%, so significant amount of 1.4% of the GDP decrease. And in nominal terms, the revenues from the corporate tax are back last year, but keep in mind that in between we've had COVID-19, we had energy crisis, war in Ukraine, and also inflation, which was very high in Latvia, and thus the nominal terms does not reflect the real effect, the real results of the revenues. I think that we will not do differently in Latvia simply because it is very unusual to be back with today's knowledge in the past. But nevertheless, we've handled these revenue losses with reform for the personal income tax, with introduction of the progressivity of the personal income tax, and as it is historically used in Latvia, changes in excises, environmental taxes, and other taxes. Politicians in Latvia always are more dealing with excises and excise type taxes instead of increasing VAT, for example, as Estonian does last years. This was a request from the business community to have Estonian-style corporate income tax. So business community, I hope at least so, was happy with the introduction of the corporate income tax, but at the same time, I don't know any economic subject, any businessman who is happy with the taxation at all, and then business community having one incentive always ask for another incentives, and this goes against the fiscal interests, and you still need to finance state expenditures, you still need to finance governmental needs. Defense expenditures are, of course, challenging also in Latvia, but at the moment the Working Party worked for 2 years in the Ministry of Finance and decided that there will be no significant changes in the corporate income tax at the moment, and decided not to reform corporate income tax in Latvia at the moment. Of course, it will be question of, let's say, medium-term or long-term period compatibility with the OECD initiatives on the base erosion, on the anti-avoidance rules. The same is implementation of the EU directives for the corporate taxes such as ATAD and future development of anti-avoidance rules. And this again will be challenging because Latvian style and Estonian style corporate income tax are different from the classical, and classically you are having in the corporate income tax. But EU directives, for example, should be implemented into the national law. So this could be a challenge for the future development of the system. I think that at the moment we had negotiations on these global changes of the taxation and changes on the pillar, but at the moment we are staying for the interests of Latvian entrepreneurs, and we are trying to continue our policy in the corporate income tax as it is. I don't think that in the field of the tax administration it was less work, especially taking into account that the most tax workload is in the field of the VAT and excises. But at the same time, it's a question of a change management, and we had a transition period, so tax administration was well prepared for the changes, and we had at least a half a year for the changes in the administration.